Candice Sanderson began her extraordinary journey into the unknown on her way to work one morning. But this morning proved to be very different as she began to receive messages from other realms of existence. The communications were too strong to ignore, and the clinically trained psychologist worked through doubt, fear, and professional judgment to acknowledge them. Though reluctant, Candice became a messenger, bringing us news of a verifiable spiritual dimension and truths about creation, time, and the very nature of our existence. Read Candice Sanderson's book, The Reluctant Messenger, where she describes her conversations with many non-physical entities. As a trained psychologist, she only believed what she could measure with her physical senses. Yet, she was led down a path, and she learned lessons about everyday life and how everything relates to energy. A must-read book that highlights the author's spiritual journey. It's uplifting, inspiring, and transformative. The Reluctant Messenger, now available in your favorite bookshop and on Amazon.
Hi, I'm Paul from Trending, Who, What, Where, and When. Today I will be speaking with the multiple award-winning author, Candice Sanderson, about her book, The Reluctant Messenger. Candice will be joining us from Naples, Florida. I think I'd like to start by saying I really enjoyed listening to your book. It was very different for me, and I learned a lot of things listening to it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. You know, you say it was different for you. You should have been in my shoes when it happened. It was very different for me too.
Well, then I'll ask you to tell us, our followers, where you would take your friends when they come to visit you in Naples, Florida.
A piece of paradise. This is what I see every morning from my balcony. It uplifts me. It makes me appreciate the beauty in the world that surrounds us. As I glance at the Gulf of Mexico from my home in Naples, Florida, I realize finding beauty and peace in nature can uplift all of us. Stepping outside brings us joy and a little bit of paradise. Sometimes just taking a deep breath and appreciating your surroundings can bring a different perspective. I thank you for letting me share a little bit of my life with you. First of all, living in Naples is like living in paradise. I absolutely love it. One of the first places I take people is to the Naples Pier. It is iconic. The pier was originally built in 1988. Now, it's been rebuilt a few times after hurricanes, but right now you can walk on it. Paul, there's like 1,000 feet. You're walking straight into the Gulf of Mexico. You can look down on both sides. The water is so clear. You can see schools of fish swimming by. Sometimes you can catch a manatee. You see the dolphin. It is beautiful. So that's the first place I take my friends. 40 minutes away from Naples, you can go to the third largest national park in the lower 48 states. That's Everglades. It has like 2,400 square miles of nothing but nature. Camping, biking, canoeing, fishing. It's a great place. When I go, I just take my camera and I started connecting with non-physical forces like angels. One of the ways that they can intervene or connect is through electricity. So things like this happen to me quite often, where power goes out, light bulbs flash. So I've got cold chills right now. Cold chills for me that's always represented something that I need to pay attention to. That means something is happening for a reason. So I think maybe the angels just wanted to share with you that they could manipulate your power and turn it off. So now you both have been able to just witness just a little bit of what my life's like these days. And I can spend all day there just looking. But those who are into camping and biking and canoeing can do that as well too. Clam Pass, you take a tram through 35 acres of beautiful mangrove swamps. And then as soon as you come out of these swamps, here you are right in front of the sandy beaches of the Gulf of Mexico. And it's, absolutely beautiful. Another thing is Naples is known as a mecca for its high-end shopping. Now, I live here, so I don't go shopping, but I take my guests window shopping. With our subtropical climates, my favorite shops are all outdoors, and you can go 12 months out of the year. Venetian Village is very close to where I live. I can walk there, I usually do, but the shops are built on stilts over Venetian Bay. And it has a lot of what I call the old Florida charm, just like Fifth Avenue, 3rd Street South. You feel like you're just walking back in time with, looking at old Florida. Another place I like to go are the waterside shops. Lots of high-end shops there. But what I really like the best is visiting the Tesla dealership. I've never, I can't believe that they have a dealership in this beautiful shopping mall, but to walk in and look at these beautiful high-end cars is a real treat for most people that I bring. But my favorite spot, Paul, is exactly where I live. I can see and hear the surf of the Gulf of Mexico from my own 2-bedroom apartment. The water is crystal clear. You can see manatee swimming by, dolphins swimming by. Every morning I grab a cup of coffee and I'm just sitting on my balcony, just soaking in this beautiful place that I feel so lucky to call my home, Naples, Florida. It is truly, truly a paradise.
Please tell us about how your writing career began and how it's evolved into being published.
Well, believe me, when I tell you, I didn't plan on being an author. I was happy just being a psychologist, going to work every day, putting in my 50 hours each week. I never, Paul, intended this, but my life changed in August 2013. In a 10-minute period of time, everything that I knew or thought that I knew about life disappeared. I was commuting to work one morning early, and I had this, I don't know what to call it other than a spontaneous opening to spirit and a spontaneous opening to the world of the non-physical, the world where angels are. And when this happened, frankly, I was a little concerned because as a psychologist, I had been trained to look at what's wrong. We always look at the pathology. So that's what I did. What's wrong with me? But my professional training kicked in and I began to objectively observe and document these experiences. And in a very short period of time, I had over 100 pages of messages. They kept arriving, and one day the messengers made a statement about when you write a book, and I'm saying, what? Write a book? I don't think so. But they kept nudging me, and little by little, I finally gave in. So that's how my career began, not as a psychologist, but as an author. It began by accident. Never intended it, but it's been great. I've loved it.
Is that what inspired you to write The Reluctant Messenger?
Yes. And it's interesting. That's an interesting question. Inspired. If you look at the word inspired, It literally translates to in spirit. And that is literally what happened to me. By the time the messengers informed me that I would be writing a book, I had collected hundreds and hundreds of messages, many that I had been able to verify. Now, Paul, I know you've mentioned before that you had not read a book like this before, so I do know how bizarre this might sound to many of the listeners. I was a skeptic too, before I wasn't. I went from skeptic to believer in one day. In one day, I went from psychologist to psychic. How does that happen? I mean, I know it sounds impossible, but it happened to me. With my training, scientific background as a psychologist, I believe that if you couldn't measure something with your physical senses, it didn't exist. At least in my world, it didn't at that time. So imagine my surprise to find myself face to face with what I did not believe in, the unseen world of spirit. By the time I learned that I would be writing a book, I had already, stepped into this non-physical world of energy. And I had already realized a lot of the wisdom that the messengers had shared with me. So my initial reaction had been very cautious, perhaps with a little fear, but eventually I became comfortable with these messages and I actually learned to embrace them. And I realized it was really pretty awesome. So when I finally accepted their invitation from the messengers to write a book, it's like, okay, I give up, I accept, I did it. So that's how my book came to be.
Well, tell us about your book, The Reluctant Messenger.
It chronicles my spontaneous opening to spirit. My story, and perhaps my life, begins on August 28th, 2013. I was driving to work early one morning before sunrise. There's hardly any traffic on the road. My car was like on automatic pilot. I'm halfway paying attention to my driving, of course, but the other half of my attention, I'm running through the day's schedule. It's like I've got back-to-back meetings, probably no time for lunch. And all of a sudden, just out of the blue, this message drops into my awareness. I thought about it later and I thought, gosh, this is so pretty. I wish I'd thought of it. I mean, I knew it was not something that came from me. It was something for me. And it was a message about a flower and how a flower is a flower. So I saw in my mind's eye, I saw the word flower hyphenated, that a flower is a flower of energy. And when it's in perfect alignment with source, it creates a flower. The message said that a plant reaches deep into Mother Earth and ascends toward Father Sky. And when it is in ideal alignment, it produces a blossom. Then the message said that humans too are like flowers. They are flowers of energy. And the message ended with, let us all be flowers of energy. Well, I did not know what to think of this. I knew it wasn't from me. It was more like a message for me. The words, the vocabulary, the phrasing, Paul, not mine. I didn't use words like source, Father Sky, Mother Earth. And I certainly didn't refer to people as humans. My first thought was, okay, what's wrong with me? So that's how we're trained as psychologists, to look at what's broken. And then I realized, I'm not crazy. I was oriented to time, place, and person. It's like, okay, this must be one of those mystical experiences I've read about. So I just dismissed it. But then a few minutes later, I arrived at work. I'm the first car, empty parking lot. And I had what I can only describe as a mystical experience with the royal poinciana tree. And it made me realize the message I had gotten about the flower was important. And a few days later, I started getting messages from people who had passed away. Um, they had messages for the loved ones that they'd left behind. And soon after that, I can only describe it as floodgates opening. Now, by that time, I am very organized. So I had established this routine. I would keep my iPhone close by, and I would hit the record button on my voice memo app, and I would dictate the words that would come to me. I would do this on my morning commute. I would get in the car, buckle up, turn on the engine, hit record, and the words would just come. And that's exactly what they were. They were words. I didn't hear them with my ears, but Paul, they were so specific that I could dictate them into my phone with such specificity. The messengers would tell me how to end, a sentence. They would say period or exclamation mark. They would tell me when to start a new paragraph. If they used a word I wasn't familiar with, I saw it in my mind's eye, so I knew how to spell it, yet I knew how it was pronounced. It was unbelievable. If I made a mistake, they said, strike that. And then they would give me the correct wording. I knew that whatever this was, I needed to record it. So my training as a psychologist kicked in, and I stepped back and I became the objective observer. I didn't want to judge it. I just allowed the information to flow. More than once, there were times in the morning, the messengers would be a little eager and they would start giving me a message. Like sometimes I would be in the shower and I would say, whoa, give me a little space here. Hold off a minute. And they would. I would get in the car, hit record, and then the messages would just spill forth. But this book chronicles my tales, and it actually says, and the Reluctant Messenger, Tales from Beyond Belief. And I call them tales because many of the stories sound like they're made up, like they're fairy tales. They were undoubtedly beyond many people's belief system. And you've got to realize they were beyond my belief system back then, yet I was the one having these experiences.
In the book, numerous times you mentioned your experiences with Monroe Institute in Virginia. In fact, I saw an interview you did with someone from there and you'd said, I think you did all but one of their courses.
I absolutely love Monroe Institute. It has become my home away from home. Over the years, it now has become my spiritual practice. And it's not really spiritual. Monroe Institute their main campus is located outside Charlottesville, Virginia. And they're known across the world for expanding consciousness. They use binaural beats and other sound-based technologies in order to help people experience different ways of looking at the world. You expand your awareness. Now, a story, in order for me to really talk about Monroe, that would take several hours. So I'm going to just pare this down to one event. I was a founding member of Monroe Institute's local chapter network. That's their volunteer wing. And we had a working retreat scheduled for February 2013. Now, this was complicated because 3 months before, and here I'm one of the leaders, I'm supposed to lead this, I had had a simple bilateral thyroidectomy. Easy surgery, right? Wrong. There were complications. My right vocal cord became paralyzed and I could not speak above a whisper. I couldn't swallow thin liquids without choking. Sometimes I had trouble breathing. But as a psychologist, Paul, I had to have my voice. I couldn't function without it. So I wore this headset with a microphone. It was connected to a voice box that I either wore around my neck or on my belt, and it worked. It was actually embarrassing, and truth be known, it was a little humiliating, but I had to do something. Well, 3 months after my surgery with still no voice, my surgeon sent me to a specialist who scoped my throat, and he diagnosed what I already knew was a vocal cord paralysis, and he recommended surgery. Now, why is this important? I finally had proof, didn't know I needed it at the time, but I had video proof that my right vocal cord was paralyzed. I was supposed to return the following week to start the pre-surgical process. I didn't go. Enter Monroe Institute, where I experienced a medical miracle, a true medical miracle a few days later. After I'd been to the doctor and had my throat scoped, I flew to Virginia for this retreat. At the end of the program, we tested some of Monroe's newest sound-based technology. During a sample, a 5 or 10 minute sample, something bizarre and miraculously occurred. I saw Buddha in my mind's eye. He approached me and he said, "Be silent for 24 hours. Sorry, this gets me teary-eyed. And you will be healed." Now, you've got to realize this was 6 months before I started getting messages and visions from the other side. I was shocked. I knew I hadn't made this up, because if I had, I would have selected someone from my Christian upbringing. Buddha? He wasn't even in my orbit. That's why I knew this didn't come from me. I was desperate. I didn't want surgery, so I honored the request. 24 hours later, Paul, just like I am now, my voice returned. It was indeed a medical miracle, a documented medical miracle. It was also, I didn't know it at the time, the foundation for my spiritual opening 6 months later. So since then, I've returned to the Institute. It just feels like my home away from home. So that's one of about 2 billion stories I could share with you about Monroe.
Well, it seems like you've had a lot of experiences there. I looked at their website and they had all these different courses. Now they're giving them online. They're giving them virtually.
Yes, because of COVID, that they're going to an online platform. And I actually attended one of them probably a month ago. And I've been to so many programs now. I thought, oh gosh, it's not gonna be nearly as good as an in-person program, but I was wrong. It was fabulous. You still get the same sound quality. It was fabulous. So yes, they're online now. So it's a great place to check out, monroeinstitute.org.
Yeah, okay, well, thank you. In your book, you also mentioned your church experiences with Reiki.
Yes, there's a church, small church in nearby Fort Myers, and they have these monthly energy healing sessions while someone plays a crystal bowl, or crystal bowls, which is actually another form of energy healing. A friend had invited me to go several years ago, and I'd never been. I thought, okay, let's go. This was October 2015. Now, I had never been to a place that combined Reiki with crystal bowls. Reiki is a form of energy healing, and the practitioner uses their hands. They put their hands above your body. They don't touch you, but there's an energy exchange. It's, if people are familiar with the Bible, they talk about laying on of hands. It's like that, but they don't lay on the hands. They don't touch you. And then using the crystal bowls, these are huge bowls that they play with a mallet, and it just creates these vibrations. You know how you can get stemware like fine crystal and run your finger around the top of it, you hear this vibration? Well, imagine, an 18-inch bowl with that. Very strong vibrations, but it's also healing. But during this event, I had just a profound experience. They had background music playing. We were all lying on the floor, just, around the room, around these crystal bowls that were being played in the middle. And they started to, dim the background music, fade that, so they could start with the bowls. And I heard this boom, 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 this drum beat like a heart. Now, to this day, I don't know whether it was actually there or just in my world. I think it was probably just in my world. But that drum beat seemed to take me on a different path. And all of a sudden, I looked up and I saw a vortex. Again, this is in my mind's eye. A vortex, like a small tornado, just spinning at the top of the room near the ceiling. And 3 groups of people entered this portal. The first were ancestors. And that's how they identified themselves to me, a large group of Native Americans. Then they moved to the back of the room. And then came a smaller group of Native Americans. And I knew that they were the wisdom keepers of the tribe, the council of elders. They circled the room also. Then the third group that came in were angels. And I just sobbed, tears just flooded my eyes. It just felt so holy. And they were all turned facing the portal. So I looked up again, and in comes this beautiful Native American woman, immediately followed by this knobby-kneed, pure white buffalo calf. He had blue eyes, pink around the edges of the eyes, a pink nose, pink on the inside of his ears. And the woman spoke, and she said, the white buffalo represents like the energy manifestation of what is required for healing. Innocence, complete surrender, purity, passion, the open heart, and the playfulness of a child. She said, these are the requirements for miracles. Well, I didn't know what to think of this. I'm just busy jotting down everything I can. And as soon as this was over, Reverend Bledsoe asked if anyone wanted to share. I was a little shy. I'd never been here before. And I was wondering, what are they going to think? They're going to think I'm nuts, but something told me, speak up. So I did. Now, my back was to Reverend Bledsoe as I, talked about what I had just seen. My friends later told me that her mouth like just dropped open while I spoke. But when I finished, she asked me, she said, have you ever been here before? I said, no. Then she went on to tell me that Church of Spiritual Light was built on the foundation of the medicine wheel. Now, I had no idea what that meant. I'm still not sure what it means, but I knew it had something to do with Native culture. She then asked me if I was aware that the church housed a crystal bed from Brazil. I didn't. I said no. She then told me that the crystal bed was a portal that allowed energy healings to flow. That sounded kind of crazy, but after all, I had seen a portal, a vortex at the top of the room. What she said next, Paul, astounded me. She told me that next to the crystal healing bed was a picture of white buffalo calf woman. Who? I had never heard of her in my life. I mean, I was not raised out west. I was raised in Paducah, Kentucky. I had no idea that she was an icon in Native culture. Reverend Bledsoe then said at the other end of this crystal bed was a painting done by one of the Reiki practitioners. Get this, it was a picture of a portal surrounded by a tier of ancestors, a tier of angels, and a tier of the council of elders. It's like I could not believe what was happening. How could I have known these things? Logically, I couldn't, since this was the first time, I had ever been here. But since it had been a couple of years since I've opened to spirit, it's like I know there is so much more to life than what meets the eye. What I've learned now is I see the world through the lens of energy. Everything is energy, whether it's an object or whether it's an emotion. And we can all learn to perceive differently. You know, our physical senses do a great job helping us to navigate our world, but it also limits us. We can learn to stretch the parameters of our senses and learn to perceive things like energy that comes in. And that's exactly what I was doing. I didn't know it, I didn't understand it, but I was beginning to open my ears and eyes to the world of energy, the world of the non-physical.
In your book, you also mentioned the Great Shift 2012 and the Mayan calendar.
Yes, that was fascinating. The Mayan calendar ended December 21st, 2012. And I thought, just my luck. That's my birthday, December 21st. And 2012 would be the day that I would be eligible to receive Medicare. And I thought, great, the world's going to come to an end. Well, we know what happened. 2012 came and went, and nothing happened. The end of the Mayan calendar did not equate to the end of the world. But what the messengers have told me was that was the beginning of a great shift. And that they're still giving me messages today that we are still in a shift now. It's part of the transition of Earth, Mother Earth, as I call her now, as she evolves. As she goes to higher vibrational frequencies, everything's energy, she brings us along with her. And what happens is that we too change. There are new energy frequencies that surround us. And along with this, the veil that's between the dimensions begins to fade. This is why people like me, an ordinary person, can have such a life-altering change. This is like why people like me can start to reach into other dimensional spaces, things beyond what our physical senses can measure. What the messengers tell me about the COVID pandemic is that this is a reset for Earth. This shift is shaking our foundational beliefs, and that maybe it's time for us to inventory what's essential in our lives. If it's not essential, maybe it's time to let it go. The messengers tell me that this is a time for introspection. It's a time for us to evolve. We have choices, and we're the only ones who can make these choices. You know, will we use this time to become better people, more caring, more loving? How we use this time is up to us.
Interesting. Yeah, it's true. Your books have won so many awards. I noticed that you won Amazon #1 bestseller, Reader's Favorite Book Award, and numerous other ones. Would you like to tell us about some of the awards?
You know, I would love to. Both my books became Amazon #1 bestsellers right after they were published. It sounds great, doesn't it? But let me explain how this happens. Amazon categorizes their books, and then they rate them or rank them actually on an hourly basis. So The Reluctant Messenger became a #1 bestseller in several categories, you know, within a couple of days of its release. Now, I was amazed at how many people were interested in these types of metaphysical events. Because I was a psychologist and, believe me, not prone to believing anything unless I could measure it with my physical senses, I think it added a sense of credibility to the book. If you look at the book's subtitle, it says, An Ordinary Person's Journey into the Unknown. You don't have to be a gifted psychic to have these journeys. These events happen to me, an ordinary person. And I think that's one reason why the book has been so popular. Paul, there are many people out there, and there will be more to come, that are experiencing something similar. But they might be afraid to share it with others. Me, I guess I don't care what other people think of me. So Amazon's #1 bestseller is based on the algorithm of selling a lot of books in a short period of time. It's an honor, it truly is, but it's not necessarily
necessarily an award. Let me share with you a couple awards the book has received. Okay. First of all, to get an award, you have to enter the book into a contest, right? That makes sense. You know, there's a fee, there's an application process, and of course you have to send them your book. I had entered, you know, just a couple contests, hadn't heard anything back. Then one day, out of the blue, I received notification that I was the 2019 silver medal winner in the Reader's Favorite International Book Award Contest. I was flabbergasted. First of all, it's quite an honor to be selected. There were thousands of entries from all over the world. But more importantly, I am so organized. Why didn't I remember entering this contest? Why wasn't it on my radar? I finally solved the mystery. I searched back through my notes and I discovered I had contacted Reader's Favorite and I had paid for 3 professional reviews so that I could post them on my website. And all the reviews came back as 5-star, which was great. I mean, what an honor. But Paul, when I went back and read the fine print, the package of reviews I had purchased had automatically entered me into their contest. What a surprise, a silver medal in an international contest that I had entered by default. I didn't even know about it. A similar thing happened with the Eric Hoffer Award. I hadn't entered into the Vinci Award for Outstanding Book Cover, but my book became a finalist in 2019. The Vinci is for superior book artwork, book cover artwork. And I'm hoping that you'll have my book cover on the screen for the viewers to see this, because there's an interesting backstory. Before publishing, I'm very organized, I'm very thorough. I searched for a book cover designer. When I finally found the one I liked, they couldn't get to it for 10 months. But they provided me with a website link with a long list of other designers. After searching 15 or 20 links, I was ready to give up. Nothing offered what I wanted. And then I took another look at the list and I decided, you know what? I'm going to go to the very last link. So I scrolled down the page and checked out the very last link. The sample artwork was perfect. It was exactly what I was looking for. So I contacted them. The price was right. I sent a deposit. Hey, I live in Naples. I closed the computer and decided to take a beach walk. This is the way spirit works. By the time I got back, she had finished the cover. I did not have to wait 10 months. It was done. It was only afterwards that I learned that the company was in Ireland. It was, it was marydes.eu. I can't say enough good stuff about her work, but let me tell you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say. A few weeks later, Marina Zukova, the owner, emailed me and she asked me how I found her. Well, I went to the website so I could, send her the URL, the link. She wasn't there. Her company wasn't there. She's never been listed there. She's never used that site. But that's where and how I found her. The story continues. A few weeks later, she shares her story. She was a little hesitant to tell me. She thought it might be too strange. Imagine that. Marina said she started designing the book cover. She put a feather quill in the center of the design. And then she said she felt a presence in the room, an angelic presence that took over and designed the cover. The feather quill became an angel wing. Then she drew a picture of a woman walking the path of life that was guided by an angel wing, an angel quill, writing my path of life. Now, first of all, imagine that she thought I might think this was too unusual to share, but we got to realize the book was still in production. It wasn't even published. So of course she hadn't read it. Little did she know that her experience mirrored my new life. Just like you got a little taste of my experience when we first tried to record. You know, angels surround us every day and they guide us throughout the day. They're always sending us little messages. And if we can just learn to listen to our hearts, breathe deeply, and then start realizing what is around us. Why are we being nudged to do something? It might be the guidance from your angels.
So I was going to ask you also about you have a follow-up book to The Reluctant Messenger Returns.
Yes.
And that's already published.
Yes, and here's a picture of it right here.
Okay.
The Reluctant Messenger Returns, an unexpected adventure into the angelic realm. So it continues my story about the messages that I've gotten, but it specifically talks about adventures with angels. It starts with that medical miracle that with my paralyzed vocal cord, and I didn't even realize at the time there was a story beyond that, and it took 5.5 years before I actually realized what the story was. But this was, you know, another way where I could share with others some of the adventures that I've had with angels. Like now I'm really good at reading energy. When angels come in, I typically see these beautiful, almost like chiffon scarves of energy that comes in. For angels, it's usually pastel pink and pastel green. They're just gorgeous. And when that energy starts flowing in, I know it's from the angels. Another sign is usually tears just well up in my eyes and, flood down my face because their energy is so, oh my gosh, so loving and so just, it's so sacred and so holy. Just like when I was telling my story earlier about the angels coming in, I start to tear up. You can learn to sense energy. But anyway, this is my adventure with the angels.
Okay, that sounds like another interesting book. Any advice you would have for new writers? Write
from your heart. Don't let anyone tell you the market is too competitive. I mean, I was initially embarrassed, like how can I as a professional put my life out there for people that might roll their eyes and think this is crazy talk. But I did it anyway. And it's amazing how many people have contacted me and shared stories. They've told me stories about things that happened to them that they haven't even told their best friends or their spouses, but they feel comfortable in sharing it with me. And why? I think it's because I wrote from my heart. So don't tell anyone the market's too competitive. You do what's in your heart. Now, a lot of people are self-published this day, and that's fine. That makes perfect sense because there's print on demand. You no longer have to, store books everywhere. But if you're publishing on your own, make sure that you do contract for essential services, editing, interior design, and your exterior book covering. You don't want your book to look like it's self-published. It's okay to self-publish, but don't let your material announce that. Also, in addition to having an ebook and a print book, consider an audio book. I've used Audible for both my books, and I've been, Paul, so amazed at the popularity. People love Audible. For the first year of publishing The Reluctant Messenger, my Audible books sold more than my ebooks, paperback, and hardcover books combined. And it's an easy process. You could, record it yourself, but you need the right equipment. But all you have to do is pick out a professional. Narrators audition for you on ACX, which is Audible site. They send you audio clips, and once you've selected the narrator you want, they do all the work. You just sit back until it's recorded. Audible sets the royalties based on the length of the narrated book. You don't have any choice in that. You can choose either to split the royalties with the narrator, and if you do that, it doesn't cost you a penny up front. Or if you choose to pay the narrator up front, then you get the full royalties that are earned. But it's an easy process. And for those authors out there, you won't be sorry you did it. It's great. So write from your heart, go from your heart, and just let your heart lead the way.
I think you made a great choice with your narrator. I thought she was very good.
Good. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed her. I'm so glad that you were able to listen to the Audible edition. It's just, it's so easy to do, and it's a lot of fun too. When we first connected, we start the interview, and then all of a sudden, Paul, you're frozen. It's like, oh, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? What's going on? So we had to disconnect and reconnect. And what was it you told me when we reconnected?
And our power had gone off temporarily for about a minute.
And that this happened before during an interview?
Not before, never.
And what I said to Paul, what I said was, welcome to my world. This is, sometimes things happen, and they happen for a reason, especially when you start working with what I call are higher vibrational frequencies, like those that you see in the world of the non-physical with angels and guides. Their energy can affect us. It affects us anyway, but it can affect us very easily through electricity. There are people I know that, light bulbs go off. I mean, have you ever driven underneath a light, driving your car, those big lights? You can actually do this, and sometimes the lights will go out. But it's just a fascinating event that happened for us that I think may have just been a way to say, listen, there's maybe some truth to what this woman is saying. I guess maybe just a little demonstration for you of the effects of the non-physical world, of our angels that are around us. A little tap on the head or on the shoulder. We're here, we're listening, we're seeing.